So again, I'm Jenny Gomez with the Smithsonian, and it's really my great honor to introduce our keynote speaker this afternoon. Daimut Strieb is a resident, German-born artist, and currently the Ida Eli Rubin Artist in Residence at the MIT Center for Art, Science, and Technology. So I think her remarks today are really going to be the perfect cap-off for the focus of the content of the program today, where we talked a lot about the intersection in these two subject matters and philosophies. She works on the intersection of art and science to address contemporary issues, and as Daimut has explained to me, although art and science seem very different and are very heterogeneous concepts, they actually are connected, their work is connected by a similarity of concepts. So using these concepts, what she does is she looks at the variety of strands in science and sees those through an aesthetic and an artistic lens. It's really fascinating. So she also uses this to really affirm the avant-garde ambitions of modern art, and I think we're in for a special treat. She gained broad recognition in 2014 for her work Sugar Babe, which was a clone of the notoriously cut-off ear of Vincent van Gogh. I'm really excited to hear more about this. And leading linguist and author Noam Chomsky is an individual who Daimut has had the honor to work with extensively in her career, and he was actually the first person to speak in the ear through a sound installation. So Daimut, thank you so much for being here. On to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, the American Law Institute and the Smithsonian Institute. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm extraordinarily delighted to join this conference and hoping to be able to contribute with a focus on art, science, and technology and how they interconnect in my artwork. Though not at all a specialist in legal issues, one of my works, Sugar Babe, which you see here, a living replica of Vincent van Gogh's left ear, became subject of legal issues in museum administration when a living backup copy of the original artwork, Sugar Babe, died during the first show in ZKM in Germany in 2014. The copy that we made to cover a potential infection risk during the travels had been forgotten to be sent back on time to the US, and the art piece died due to a lack of oxygen. Although, of course, we could have grown a new one, the costs are quite dramatic high. The museum director and we found informal financial agreement. Don't know where the image went. Maybe. With connection, yeah. Yeah, we could have, of course, grown a new one. The museum director and we found an informal financial agreement, but I have to say that a legal pathway would have never come to my mind as being far too costly in terms of time and money too. I can very much imagine that museums having a hard time with, working with living or other very sensitive materials that are much more difficult to oversee and risk and to handle than any classical media, such as painting or sculptures. Before I present you the work Sugar Babe and other works in more detail, I would like to start with some brief introductory words about my work in general. And after the work presentation, I would like to add some thoughts about what drives me in art and fascinates me in science. I do believe that art and science converge in the importance of experimental work as much as in the importance of theory, and therefore both shape a significant part of my work. I would like to present you projects I realized and also those that are currently in the progress of realization at MIT to provide a perspective on my residency in Boston. Some of these projects are soon on display. Please allow me some brief introductory words on myself. I'm a German-born artist. I lived in several European countries, and now I'm based in Boston and, as just mentioned, working as artist in residence at MIT. My work links art and science to address contemporary issues, often incorporating themes related to philosophy and literature. I explore the crossover between science and art through media such as living biological materials, as you see there, nanomaterials, experimental setups, installation, video, etc. This practice includes scientific concepts, methods, and tools, engaging with science directly. The collaborations with scientists take place in the fields of human and plant genetics, quantum and astrophysics, and various types of engineering. The heterogeneous appearance of my work, which you will notice as we go through the show, results from the variety of topics and strands in science I deal with. Focused on the advanced science of our era, I feel compelled to reaffirm the romantic paradigm of the new throughout the medium itself and its combination with the arts. So let's start with the work Sugar Babe, which I just mentioned before. My first art science work, Sugar Babe. Here a view of the whole setup, is a living replica of Vincent van Gogh's left ear, involving as main technologies genetic and tissue engineering. Vincent had cut off his ear in a state of despair after a fight with his friend and painter Gauguin on 23 December 1888. It is fair to say that this act and the fact of the missing ear represents like no other the common stereotype of the romantic artist, a poor, desperate, mentally unstable genius. This is how the average public still likes to look at art and artists the most. Reason enough to challenge the cliché. The new-grown ear is reconstructed in shape based on a photo from Vincent van Gogh, as you can see here. We then took 3D facial scans from a living descendant, and in addition we created computer models from 3D impressions we took from the descendant's ear to merge then 2D and 3D information to then finally match the only existing photo that showed Vincent's left ear. The ear is composed of living immortalized cartilage cells from Leo van Gogh, descendant in 4th generation. It contains natural DNA from Vincent and engineered components, amongst other, using an advanced current genome editing technique. Here a portrait from Leo I made from him after the biopsy to obtaining cartilage cells at Mass Eye and Ear in Boston. And in allusion to the eponymous painting of Vincent's work, the very clear and detailed high-resolution photo is called Self-Portrait with Bandaged Ear. Leo van Gogh, by the way, looks just strikingly, as you can see here, like his grand-grand-grand-uncle. They're just the same. He descends from Vincent's brother in a direct descending male line and shares the Y chromosome and a sixteenth of his genome with Vincent. The Sugar Babe project refers to the Theseus paradox, a thought experiment from the Greek philosopher Plutarch. Plutarch's ship of Theseus from the 1st century questions whether a ship that has all its component parts replaced remains the same ship. Here an overview description. Sugar Babe owes its title not only to the significant use of sugar in the manufacturing process of the polymer scaffold to grow the ear when seeding it with cells, but also to the fact that the British band Sugar Babe could be seen as a modern variation of the Theseus paradox. At a certain moment, no founding members of the band were still involved in the band. Instead, there were entirely different musicians performing under the very same name. By shifting the Theseus paradox from the macroscopic and historical level to the molecular level and to the contemporary context of bioengineering, the artwork explores the potential implications of recreating a historical person after death. As a proof of principle, we use two approaches to achieve DNA replacement of natural DNA present in Leo van Gogh's cell line with Vincent's DNA present in number 1, historical samples acquired from an original source, and 2, DNA acquired from living descendants. We started out the genetic part of the project to carry out research on historical sources in the Swiss Forensic Institute on an original envelope from Vincent van Gogh from a letter he sent in 1883 to a friend, examining stamp and flaps in the hope to find original historical DNA from Vincent. The Dutch Foundation Custodia in Paris lent us generously this envelope. But we had tough luck. The postman messed it up since the stamp and envelope flap were likely licked and sealed by the postman rather than from Vincent van Gogh himself. That's how life is. The DNA recovered from the envelope did not match the Van Gogh maternal lineage. We had previously created 2 genetically matching reference samples acquired from living descendants to validate the outcome. We then worked instead and successfully with DNA replacement through living descendants. Through participation of Rosine Wening, that's the strong smoker, a strong smoking lady, and Leo van Gogh, we were able to create a new cell line using cell fusion technique containing significant parts of Vincent's genome through DNA replacement. Next to expressing great interest to the whole set of biological questions as how evolution and genetics really works, and its critical stance on genetic and bioengineering, the main focus of the artwork is the topic of the mystification of the arts and the artist, as I mentioned initially. Sugar Babe can be seen in the context of the cliché of the stereotypic romantic image of the artist as a genius, his deterministic fate, as well as certain patterns about art celebrated in the public and persistently described in art theory as well. No other artist represents the focal point of superimposed projections as much as Vincent van Gogh. He fulfills the sentimental fantasies of a broad public about the artist being necessarily poor, sick, or insane as a type of inevitable precondition for creation of true and authentic artwork. The cliché is that of the lonely, suffering artist, always on the verge of creation and self-destruction, who, to endure his existence, has to turn suffering and the beauty of creation. But even the more reputable positions in theory of art tend to a certain mystification and to predictable patterns in dealing with the exceptional position of artistic creativity compared to any other form of human innovation. Art, according to this position, simply appears, becomes apparent, is not to be declared and not explicable. There's a lot of examples for such a view in the history of aesthetics. The project in this sense can be seen as an act of demystification in the simple, banal step to regrow the ear. One could speak to the ear through a microphone system. The input sound is connected to a computer processor using a software program to generate simulated nerve impulses from the sound signal in real time. The mimic crackling sounds recorded from an electrode inserted into the auditory nerve when firing. And the installation as response to human voice input. Here you see Noam Chomsky talking to the ear.
So I would like Mr. Van Gogh, the original, to explain to us what he had in mind when he cut off his ear. Was it to illustrate the Platonic idea that the great art has an element of madness? What do you think?
I hope you had the chance to hear it. I couldn't hear it so well, but the ear for sure heard it. So, and then came Leo van Gogh, who also spoke then to his uncle's ear. So the next project is, I'd like to show you, is the work Social Sculpture, The Scent of Joseph Beuys, a scent project from 2015. That's the title of the work. Here a view of the installation in New York at Ron Feldman's gallery at my solo show, Free Radicals. Joseph Beuys' famous performance, I Like America and America Likes Me, which took place in 1974 in René Bloch's gallery in New York, is compressed to its scent components and the synthetic construction of the entire olfactory experience. In the famous performance, Beuys shared the gallery space with a wild coyote for 3 days. Scent is maybe the most ephemeral sensual experience in life, almost nothing in terms of matter, but it is perhaps the most real experience as a subconscious trigger of recognition, memory, and imagination. The presented recreated scent components consist of 7 parts: coyote, the scent of the coyote; body odor, here a close-up view. So that's Boy's synthesized body odor extracted from a pullover and a jacket he wore regularly that was saved in a plastic bag after his death. Felt, one of Boy's favorite materials, the ambulance car in which he was transported from JFK to the gallery, the center of the Soho Gallery, and here actually an overview slide, Wall Street journals, the scent of the Wall Street Journal that Boyce displayed in 2 stacks, and finally Synthesis, a combination of all scents released in a system of 7 holes. The black holes make one think of another well-known work from Joseph Beuys. In 1981, Beuys presented the work Loch at Kunsthalle Düsseldorf. Social sculpture could be seen as an ultralight monument to Joseph Beuys and his particular and unique role in art history and his importance in actual contemporary life. It parallels the temporality and spirituality found in his work. The scents are made by International Flavor and Fragrances, IFF, in New York, a New York-based global creator of scents and taste. And the original historical sources from Beuys were provided by Lucrezia de Domizio Dorini, a friend of Beuys. She gave us a pullover and a jacket, which allowed us to recreate Joseph Beuys' body scent as a core part of the display. She also provided an original piece of felt, and the site was the Ron Feldman Gallery. Here Ron Feldman, who worked most closely with Beuys in his lifetime and still represents his work. The work was also presented in a small suitcase edition, as you can see here. From Beuys to GMO beer, I'm presenting the essentials and a brief of a more conceptual work I worked on with Noam Chomsky and others. GMO stands for gene-modified organisms. It is a beer with probably very bad taste, drinkable at least in some countries, as the US, for example, I think. But it is unusual for sure. Here the photo of the work I realized in 2015, a 6-pack of standard glass bottles in a very fine crafted wooden crate. Yeast expression develops a communication system between human, computer, and biological language using natural and engineered components. So cornerstones, iconic texts of human culture, like the 7 deadly sins, O Kant's What Can I Know, What Ought I Do, What May I Hope, were mapped onto a synthetic gene of engineered yeast cells. Here's the coding we developed to translate the DNA letters into words using a particular design algorithm that reads out mutated text encoded by mutations in the synthetic DNA. The gene-modified yeast cells are used to brew some special beers. They are, as said, presented in a 6-pack of bottles, which are labeled with the several texts that had been mutated by the yeast cells. One could see the project as an advanced command to methods that were developed by French surrealist André Breton, around André Breton too, almost 1 century ago, the so-called écriture automatique, an attempt to create pictures, emotions, meanings without the intervention of critical consciousness using different scientific means, as for example, data storage in living cells. Discussions in aesthetics around the innocent eye view belong to the same context. Here you can see one example of the outcome. So that's what happened with the 4 cardinal virtues of antiquity. The next project focuses on organized crime. Physarum polycephalum is a project that maybe is of special interest to those who focus indeed on the criminal mind. It is a series of living maps of crime. A video shows a recording of a live experiment of the movement of a microorganism, the slime mold Physarum polycephalum, as it responds to the placement of feeding points of porridge oats. Its movement creates complex graphic networks similar to a road map. The created maps display networks of the different Italian mafia crime organizations as spreading out over Italy over time. Living maps can be seen as allegories of how a long-standing system of crime continues to massively intervene within the healthy legal structures, overgrowing these infrastructures to extend, and this was the topic of other maps I created, into continental and worldwide networks. The map you see here is based on a study from Giovanni Mastrobuoni in Torino, which uses declassified data on 800 mafia members who were active just before the 1961 crackdown to study the importance of criminal connections inside such a secret society. Looks bad for Italy. The next project, I think we're almost done with the North too. The next project is The Unbearable Lightness of Being, a project in outer space. The Austrian philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein gave a very famous reading instruction in his book Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. He identifies his own text as nonsensical and uses an allegory as a reading instruction for the book. The quote is the literary source for this art project. It says, he, the reader, must, so to speak, throw away the ladder after he has climbed up it. He must transcend these propositions, and then he will see the world aright. The art project converts the philosophical allegory into a real object in outer space, and you see the Earth right underneath. At the same time, the art piece could be seen as an icon of the human urge to progress and transcend, presented on a location that stands highly symbolic for the theme. On March 25th of 2014, an astronaut carried the Wittgenstein ladder to outer space to let it fly. It is presented on a strip of cellophane scotch tape as a microscopic drawing in ladder shape made by the Nobel Prize-winning isolation process from, oh, sorry, that was too fast. Microscopic drawing in ladder shape made by the Nobel Prize-winning isolation process from graphite to single atomic layers of graphene. While a video of the scotch tape with a one-atom layer drawing flying in outer space is streamed to the Earth on the web, the presentation on Earth showed the last visible ladder of the series of the copies of the producing mode shown transpierced on a beryllium needle in a transparent box. The box is presented on a very thin white platform, both mounted on a pole drilled into the ground of the exhibition site, and here an installation view. I'm turning now to ongoing and most recent projects at MIT. Currently, I'm working on two projects at MIT with Brian Waddell's Lab Department for Aero and Astronautics. They involve a very strange material. It is called carbon nanotubes, short CNTs, or known in the art world and in the public as black is black on Earth. Here a microscopic image and a 3D model. Carbon nanotubes are tiny hollow cylinders, which are made entirely out of carbon atoms, which grow on a special catalyst substance applied to carrier material like aluminium, for example. The tubes absorb 99.65% of light at room temperature. The photons are stuck in the grown forest grid of 1 millimeter high grown tubes, 50 to 200 nanometers in diameter, each tube 10,000 times thinner than a strand of a human hair. Crucially, this material is of very low density, 99% empty space. That's why when light hits the material, there's almost nothing to reflect off. The photons, particles of light, enter and become trapped into the nanotube forest, bouncing around until they dissipate as heat. This way, any coverage of any object with CNTs removes all shape, perspective, traceable surface feature of plasticity by erasing any shadows. A 3D object, therefore, appears like a flat silhouette or even a material like the void. Obviously, this is aesthetically a very interesting material. It came to be known to the public through British artist Anish Kapoor's attempt to monopolize the material for his own personal artistic use. I would like to present you now two projects we work on at MIT, which are almost finalized and will be shown shortly. Let's start with the Redemption of Vanity. The Redemption of Vanity presents a 16.7 carat natural yellow diamond, the most shiny material on Earth, covered with carbon nanotubes, the most light absorptive material, the blackest black on Earth, which makes the diamond appear to disappear. It was, as you can imagine, not very easy to find a sponsor or donor for this project who gives you a $2 million diamond, and I really tried them all at De Beers, Cartier, Tiffany. But only LJ West, the exclusive color diamond specialist in New York, supported this ambitious and maybe unusual project. Here I show you another view of this really beautiful big diamond. Though diamond and CNTs are made from the same element, carbon, the different atomic lattice structure creates opposing extremes in appearance on exposure to light. Also in formal respect, the surface appearance and the shape created through the diamond cut embraces antagonist extremes while still coinciding in the same object in the art piece. Heraclitus might have really liked it, since he was very much obsessed with that principle. The initial described features of the CNTs create such an extreme blackness that plasticity and 3D appearance are abbreviated to flatness or to that of a microscopic black hole. In fact, it is not much of an exaggeration to say things covered with CNTs appear to disappear. Here, a view on the very delicate display. Within the center, the clean room as the focal point through two large magnifiers and illuminated LED sky in order to enable the spectator to see eventually nothing. I show also some zooming views hereafter. The aesthetic appearance turns away from the persuasive and seductive senses. The literal devaluation of a $2 million diamond can be seen as a challenge to the art market and a statement on the arts through aestheticism by aesthetic means. Such a devaluation of an object of highly symbolic and economic value can be understood in respect to the embracing forces of the art market, mechanisms on the one hand, whilst expressing at the same time questions on the value of art in its more broader sense. The Redemption of Vanity explores how society attaches value to both material objects and ideas. An armed bodyguard is part of the display, not only for security reasons, but really part of the display. As mentioned, British artist Anish Kapoor had recently attempted to monopolize the CNT materials for his own personal use. We apply a CNT growth method that is open to use to any artist. We do not believe in exclusive ownership of any material or idea for an artwork. Though the next project called Haus Kundmangasse 19, it doesn't look as blue as that, but so what? Okay. Though the next project called Haus Kundmangasse 19 and the Redemption of Vanity partly overlap by the use of the material, the carbon nanotubes and its unusual properties, and also similar display as the previous project, the projects differ significantly. Haus Kundmangasse 19 takes a very different route and is concerned with the topic of the model in architecture, Wittgenstein's thought on language as a model of reality, as well as his thoughts on aesthetics as he describes them in his Tractatus. In Haus Kundmangasse 19, we built a 3D architectonic model with a scale of 1 to 150. It will be around 167 by 147 by 100 millimeter, of the famous building designed by the Austrian philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein constructed the villa together with the Austrian architect Paul Engelmann for his sister Margaret Stonebury Wittgenstein in Vienna. The model is entirely covered with grown carbon nanotubes that are attached to 3D printed alumina pieces. In effect, undermining the entire concept and purpose of a model. Here some anticipations of the final presentation and some drawings while I present you the work. An architectonic model is a clear and well-arranged overview representation of a large architectonic structure to manifest, obviously, all sculptural qualities up to exact details at a smaller scale. An architectonic model that actually is hiding its own plasticity most obviously manifests a dichotomy in itself. But it could be seen as an analogon to Wittgenstein's philosophical idea about limitations of thought and the unsayable. A sculpture that undermines or eludes its own visibility represents ideas with a very similar essence. Wittgenstein aimed in his Tractatus to draw the limits to talk that make sense and establish a borderline to that of nonsense. Explicitly, he tried to draw a limit to thought, limitations about what we are able to speak in a meaningful way. He phrased it for, in order to draw a limit to thinking, we should have to be able to think both sides of these limits. We should have to be able to think what cannot be thought. Wittgenstein thought that this borderline has to be drawn in language. And in his early work, Wittgenstein did not deny the importance of aesthetics or aesthetical problems, but he places them beyond the border where we can speak meaningfully. In terms of Wittgensteinian ideas on aesthetics, the work could be seen as representing its own unrepresentability. The display setup, like in the former project, invites again to stare into nothingness. Wittgenstein's skeptical verdict rated the possibilities of knowledge and the limitations of scientific access to the world. We feel that even when all possible scientific questions have been answered, the problems of life remain completely untouched. Of course, there are then no questions left, and this itself is the answer. The house is created from 46 small pieces. Here, slides that are made from Brian Waddell's lab to match the oven for CNT growth. And we also carried out a lot of research to achieve the blackest black, to beat Vanta black, to achieve the aesthetic results we aim to have. Another project in progress that again relates to Wittgenstein, who became in no way planned, but as a part of a certain development in my work, and in many respects a very important reference point to me, is the following art piece, Flyglass. It is currently in the process of realization, and here a view. The title of the project, Flyglass, is a literal translation of the German word Fliegenglas, which is in English attributed to an object known as fly trap or fly bottle. Now a bit obsolete, fly bottles in former times were widely used to prevent insects from the eating table. The bottom of the flyglass is filled with a blue liquid and shapes a sand space inside the glass that is different from its surrounding. The scent of petrichor, filling only the inside of the space of the glass, is in development, again with collaboration with IFF and MIT. Petrichor is the scent that frequently accompanies the first rain after a period of long, dry, warm weather. Literally, petrichor is constructed from Greek, petra, meaning stone, and chor, the fluid that flows in the veins of the gods in Greek mythology. I show you here a very small extract of a video at MIT for the release of aerosols. In collaboration with Robert Lange's lab, we use various technologies as chemical barriers on which the sand chemicals are floating, or chemical repulsion and attraction through electrostatic charges that are mixed with sand molecules, to direct the sand flow in the glass to be different to that of the surrounding outside of the glass, because a fly glass has obviously this opening, so it's difficult to engineer that. The work relates to a quote from Ludwig Wittgenstein in his philosophical investigations. He, the philosopher, must show the fly way out of the fly bottle. Wittgenstein thought we get trapped in the same seductive metaphysical problems over and over again by getting caught in misunderstandings of language. The visitor is supposed to stand with his head inside the fly glass, immersed in scent of petrichor. The dimensions are quite large and request quite some craftsmanship to build the structure in high transparent acrylic. From immense sense to the sudden, I would like to present you the work Plötzlich. Here an installation view, right here after. Here it is. The art project Plötzlich, the German word for sudden, is a project exploring time and space in the oscillating perspective of aesthetics, common sense understanding, and advanced physical concepts by the use of various technologies, as called airbag technology, and the measurement of polarization of entangled photons. Here comes the animation. Muted now, so that I can. Thank you. In athletics, a reaction time of under 0.1 seconds counts as a false start, since it is rated as an impossible reaction time frame for humans. We therefore could quote everything happening in a period of time of under 100 milliseconds as here and now. 7 characters, here and now, arranged as inflatable sculptures, inflate with high air pressures, with enormous speeds to almost 3-meter height. They appear instantly and out of nothing as an explosive shock to then deflate and collapse in a time range of 30 to 50 seconds, followed by a period of 3 to 5 minutes of total silence. The artistic means involve various technologies, such as cold airbag technology for the inflationary process and the measurement of the polarization of entangled photons to link the two sets of letters and to establish a random signal to control the choreography of rise and fall of the characters. The link between the grouped letters will be created through quantum entanglement, the peculiar quantum mechanical correlation between separated particles that Einstein called spooky action at a distance. Pairs of entangled photons will be produced by a device located between the sets of characters, with one photon sent to each set through an optical fiber. The polarization of these photons will be completely random, but the two photons will be perfectly correlated. Each set will have a detector to measure the polarization, and the patterns of inflation would be determined by those measurements. The patterns will be unpredictable, and the entanglement mechanism will pique the viewer's sense that the art project is a manifestation of some of the most fascinating phenomena of physics. Entanglement, in addition, connects to discussions of profound philosophical questions such as realism and free will. Please note that maybe the most radical epistemological questions has been shifted from philosophy to physics. In our common sense understanding, the sudden describes a radical opposition to eternity and is, at the very moment coming abrupt into being, our most immediate experience of time. It stresses time, how it is perceived by humans as a temporal succession of snapshots stringed together. The now divides into before and after, relating to change in space through movement. It is present in a conceptual grid of memory, experience, and projected expectation. In such a perspective, the present moment is seen as the only real existing quality with respect to time. In aesthetic respects, the here and now has been focused on by Walter Benjamin in terms of the erratic nature of art and his famous essay, The Work of Art in the Age of its Technological Reproducibility. He outlines the devaluation of this essential feature of the artwork through the process of reproduction, which causes the work to lose its authority. The internet and instant communication media puts the authenticity of aesthetic experience in an even much more critical state. The project could be also seen in the context of the various concepts of space and time that have emerged from modern physics. The fundamental nature of time is still a mystery, but the descriptions of time in physical theories are often very, very different from our intuition. From the time of Newton, when physicists first hypothesized that the universe evolves according to well-defined laws of motion, the distinction between past, present, and future has become obscure. If the description of the universe at any time can be in principle be calculated from its description of any other time, what is the meaning of the now that plays such an important role in our perception? The Einsteinian picture of a dynamic space-time that can bend, twist, and stretch, and for which the flow of time depends on the motion of the observer and the gravitational fields she experiences, defies our sensory experience of time. The Einsteinian view precludes the notion of a universal simultaneous now that can be defined across the cosmos. More recently, physicists have been exploring the possibility that space and time are not even part of the fundamental description of reality, but instead emerge from the more fundamental laws of quantum theory, with the quantum property of entanglement playing a crucial role. The familiar sensations of here and now have been relegated to the status of mere illusions. The hilarious and grotesque showdown of the characters maybe is an adequate tableau to this. Here's some drawings of these gigantic letters, 3 meters high, and an average width of 160 to 170 centimeters. The sound will be much more than what we've heard today. It's very, very violent. I would like to close with the work Litmus from 2014. A litmus paper is held in the mouth of a number of scientists of varying age, origin, and working in various fields in order to measure their pH value. 12 high-resolution portraits, 125 by 160 centimeters, of eminent scientists are on display, questioning the role and importance of the human subject in the scientific enterprise. Most scientists take a leap of faith with the idea of a from us independent existing world. So Marty Chalfie, Carol Greider, Noam Chomsky, John Mather, and here are all participants. So I hope you enjoyed the art projects and I presented you, and I would like to present you now some notes about what drives me in art and what fascinates me in science. In the process of civilization, the increasing dominance of the technological world in the scientific age has replaced the natural surrounding by a matrix of technological application of increasing complexity. They are based on scientific concepts. These concepts and application, today often dispersed by social media and instant communication, shape almost all aspects of our life, including our professional and personal social structure, even our intimate relationships. And the work on the intersection of art and science, in my perspective, is able to involve even very highly specialized science into the social and aesthetic discourse. At least from the 18th century on, art and science have been seen as profoundly opposing each other. The influence is mostly directed from the sciences into the arts. Technological invention has shaped the relationship as fundamental in a disruptive or affirmative manner. Think about the role of photography for modern art, or the invention of synthetic colors. Only in advanced physics, maybe in math, it seems that aesthetic features, as the simple and elegant equation, is tied to efficiency and truth values. The fields do correspond in the genius invention as much as in the exercise within an established canon. Both art and science inherit a permanent avant-garde mania for the new, a dismissal of dogmatic knowledge and free exercise. As the most manifest oppositions, we could note the most significant focus on the senses and the subjective perspective with all its variety of states. The subjective perspective, which is in science aimed to be replaced with a third-person description, is a powerful distinction to the scientific stance. Every artist is initially free to apply his own parameters, forms, views, reflections, and expressions to the world and his work. In the arts, the focus is the general condensed in the special, the single artwork that defines its very unique existence. An essential condition to this has been found through the process of fading away of the religious or ideological roots of art within the last 400 or 500 years. This development even accelerated in the last century with both searching the very borders of art for the very borders of art in formal aspects and enlarging dramatically its objectives and vocabulary. There is, in essence, no ontology to arts. Science, by contrast, hinges on the ontology of the world, even if the relationship is much more elusive than initially thought. Both contemporary art and science show us, at least in quite a vast part of their appearances, an alien picture of the world in respect to our common sense understanding, and even towards our imagination. In many ways, scientific concepts, as in relativity or quantum mechanics, are much more extreme than any imagination had potentially ever taken us. Perhaps this is, after all, what fascinates me the most as an artist. Science declines color, smell, sound, which are the most profound aesthetic means, as having no ontological existence in their own right and on any fundamental level. Science, in this sense, implicitly renders and outlines the shining appearance of the arts as illusionary and essentially false. Even what we call reality, time, and space are turning out to be very elusive concepts in any current physical description. But they kind of merge. Science offers powerful theories that allow future predictions as no other source of knowledge and aims to control and profound understanding of the cosmos. But in this process, it also shows us at the same time our limitations in respect to our understanding capacities, our volitions, and concepts of humankind. Art has ever since been essentially and intimately related to the notion of truth. If not appearing in an affirmative way, we can recognize it as a subversive quality. In this regard, art appears fundamentally partisan, and any form of partisanship is something that anyone within the science will consequently avoid. It is difficult, though, to imagine any paradigmatic relevance of art without any claim of truthfulness of the arts as well as their utopian powers. Science derives its power from a similar paradigmatic relevance, but made some very profound shifts and has lowered its initial goals significantly. To me, the intersection of art and science can illuminate and shape such fundamental issues and their relevance for our time beyond hardened and dogmatic postmodern positions. The mere capability to pose a certain question might already be part of the answer. The arts promote the human subjective perspective, and science relativizes it. Together, they allow profound yet most wild imagination. Artistically, I'm very interested in the aesthetic powers of technologies and scientific concepts themselves. They offer aesthetic dimensions and options that are new and different to any other traditional medium. Even if art would have come to an end in its radical modern experimental development, its contemporary powers can be as paradigmatic and of formal richness ever new. Every time has its own expression, and the art's power can shape and reflect this at the same time. I think that engaging conceptually with science through the arts cannot result in an associative parallel world with almost mystical associations. These attempts are, strictly speaking, nothing else than a position of ignorance towards the scientific world and an obstinate withdrawal to the safe world of subjective fantasy. A serious artistic confrontation, however, should aim to dismantle their apparent structure. The way we use technology and science makes the art-science interface, to my mind, a more relevant position than to paint another oil on canvas. Georges Braque once said, "Art is made to disturb, science reassures." Though the latter is true probably only in a certain way, I see the interaction of art and science as an important tool to reassure the arts of their own avant-garde roots. Focused on the advanced science of our era, I feel compelled to reaffirm the romantic paradigm of the new throughout the means itself and its combination with the arts. In some sense, the art-science interface poses the topic of the aesthetic human who unifies logos and imagination and fantasy in a radical fashion. True, art is fiction, imagination, and illusion, and true through its shining appearance, thus in essence artificial and false. Paradoxically for the one, and consequently for the other, it allows us to open up understanding the world and our place in it. As Nietzsche says, the existence of the world is justified only as an aesthetic phenomenon. Thank you. That was it.